Hi folks, Tino here with the Countdown to Kick-Off show, joined for this one by Brydo ahead of Celtic v Hibs on Matchday 2, coming up on Sunday at 12:30. Brydo, good to have you back on board. What was your thoughts, first of all, on last week's opening win, 4-0 against Kelly?
How you doing, mate? Great to be back on. I think it was excellent. The approach, the quality, the goals, the non-award of a penalty just to kind of get us back to where we finished off last season. But yeah, I think it just settles us all into the season, I think. 2 points ahead of what might be our biggest rivals in Hearts. No, I was just joking. It could be, but getting ahead early doors, and it just settles it all into the season as we see it. So yeah, I was delighted with it.
Yeah, it was a pretty perfect start. But who stood out for you? There's a few candidates. Matt O'Reilly's continued his pre-season form. Kyogo's looking very lively. Khun's looking good. I think Reo officially picked up the man of the match. But who was the main man for you?
I thought it was Hatate, to be honest. I thought he was the one that it's maybe because we missed him so much last year, and it was great to just see him fully fit. We've seen it a few times in his Celtic career. He's had gaps with injuries, and he's just maybe not looked at. He looked kind of tired in periods under Ange, and then gets a rest and comes back, and it's like, wow, this guy can really play. So I would say Hatate, but I thought O'Reilly was composed. I thought the boys in the back four used the ball quite well, used it quickly. So as a collective, I thought they were great. Khun, it's just that second season, if you like, type thing. I think it's going to be a cracker for him. I think we've all across the podcast shows said that he's maybe the kind of breakthrough player this year for us all. So I'm excited to see that. He's the type of player we want to see at Celtic Park.
Definitely. A really enjoyable day at Celtic Park on Sunday, and there's background noise. We'll cover some at Brydo in terms of the transfer stuff, but in terms of the on-the-field stuff, Cook and McGast at the moment, players look like they're enjoying themselves under Brendan Rodgers and off to a flyer last week, which was great to see. Before we kick on, thanks as always to everyone who's joining us in the live at the moment. We've got Mark, Paul Allen, Sean, 420, Martin, and good for everyone. Good to see everyone as always. If you do have any questions or comments for myself and Brydo over the next 30 minutes or so, be sure to drop them in and we'll do our very best to get around them. Also, if you want to make a point of supporting the Celtic Exchange throughout this season, you can check out the show notes for ways that you can do so. Brydo, I listened to Brendan Rodgers' press conference earlier on, a few bits and bobs there. One of the main headlines you might have picked up this afternoon is Callum McGregor stepping back from international football. What do you make of that decision by the captain?
Well, first of all, I think he's taken a bit of stick from the Tartan Army or neutral fans from other clubs, certainly from my experience just in WhatsApp groups and chatting to people. They're the first to have a go at Callum McGregor when the team's not doing that well, and he's the first that they should be replaced, and this should be in, and Gilmour should start, and all the rest of it. Scotland will miss Callum McGregor big time because some people just don't realise what they've got until it's not there anymore. His experience, his quality on the ball, the Euros was difficult for him. And I think that he had been an intelligent guy. He would have sought a lot of advice. And I think probably Rodgers has had a big part to play in that as well. Rodgers is all about that kind of longevity of your career, looking after yourself, keeping yourself in peak condition. And he's made that decision. And for him, I think it probably is the right one. And certainly for Celtic, I think it's excellent news, selfishly, as Celtic fans, but as Scotsmen and stuff like that, I think it's a real blow for Scotland.
Yeah, I'd agree. And Callum McGregor doesn't miss many games of football, and we're crying out throughout the season at times for him to get a break. Celtic played 50 games last season, and bar, a few that he missed through injury, he starts every single one. He rarely comes off as well, and I think this will now ensure that he can take that time, Brydo, between fixtures just to recover, to rest, to recuperate and come back fresh for everything he's doing for Celtic. As it happens, Brendan Rodgers said that he wasn't too involved in the process as such, but that Callum McGregor, wanted a word with him about it. And Brendan Rodgers said he was effectively a sounding board. It sounds like at that point the player had made his decision and he just wanted to bounce that off the manager. And I think Rodgers says, similar to yourself, selfishly, it's a good move for Celtic, and it should be a good move for Callum himself. So that's the situation there. In terms of some other stuff, he's changed his tact, Brendan Rodgers, on Adam Idah questions. It used to be, he's a Norwich player, I won't discuss another team's player. Today's chat was, well, as you know, talks are ongoing there. and hopefully something will come of it. The latest reports, I think it's coming from Anthony Joseph of Sky Sports, saying that talks are now at advanced stages with Adam Idah. What's your thoughts there? It's been a bit of a saga, hasn't it? To an extent, the same as Paulo Bernardo's deal, but it looks like we're getting closer, and that'd be a pretty welcome bit of news.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Adam Idah's had since January, he's went from being lambasted and ridiculed and doing a Norwich reject to then coming in and just proving a lot of people wrong, proving some people right. For a young guy, his numbers are fantastic. So for us as a club, he fits the model perfectly. He also provides a completely different type of option to Kyogo in certain games. I think in Europe it'll be massively important, especially in the away games. So I'd be delighted if it gets over the line. Absolutely delighted. I just think that, yes, it's been a bit of a saga, but there are mitigating factors in that. Norwich got a new manager who would obviously want to see all the players. He'll have a different opinion to the manager before. And if that manager looks at Adam Idah's performances like we have, then why would they not want him involved at Norwich? But that ship had looked like it had sailed, and Idah had made his decision that he wanted to have his future at Celtic Park and to get a decision thrashed out. He's since been booed on by the Norwich fans at half-time, I think it was. He's deliberately, well, he said it's not, but deliberately never went to the training camp and got fined or whatever. So he's obviously trying his best as a player to create a move. So when that thing happens, it's very difficult to come back from that. So if you're saying it's at advanced stages, then I fully expect that to happen at some point. We've only got one striker, so the sooner the better, sorry. But if we're going to get the right people in, then sometimes we just need to wait and play the game, as opposed to, we could have threw money at like Miovski, for example, but Miovski, who I think is a cracking player, but he's quite similar to Kyogo. So, what difference would we be getting with the two players? So I think Idah's the right choice for me. And I think we're looking at getting another striker in as well as a kind of third choice as well, I believe. So who that'll be, I don't know. But getting Idah in with 100%, I think is the right move for the club.
I think so. And, I think we all know by now that transfers, buying footballers just isn't straightforward. There's so many moving parts, least of all the change in manager at Norwich, but the Norwich board, he was in a long-term deal there, I believe, 4 or 5 years, so they might want to play hardball, agents getting involved, there might be other offers from elsewhere. There's so many things. It's not just, I say this a lot, but it's not just like, buying a pint of milk. You don't just walk up and say, there's your money, I'll take the milk and we'll head off. There's loads to it, and I think a bit of patience has been required across the board. Of course, for the fans, it's been frustrating for all of us and for Brendan Rodgers, but it looks like we're finally getting to the end of that one, and the hope is it will then add a couple more. What do you think of the price point? The suggestion is it's somewhere between 6 and 8 million, and certainly if it's at the higher end of that, Brydo, 8 would seem quite toppy. He's a guy I really like. I'm delighted it looks like we're getting him back, but 8 million is a lot of money, and it's not far off Celtic's record transfer fee. Yeah,
I think it's a bit of a bizarre situation. I was kind of debating with different people about it throughout the day. He's only on something like £5,000 a week or something. It's like, so he's not on a lot of money, which doesn't really make sense. So if they value him so high at £8 million, why is he only getting paid £5,000 a week? It doesn't really make sense. I think they're seeing that Celtic really want him and they're holding out and trying to push. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Norwich are entitled to do with their player what they will. If it was to be that, sometimes you just need to bite the bullet and pay the wee bit extra. Celtic are notoriously difficult with the negotiations, and it seems to take a wee while. But if the end result is better for Celtic, the Bernardo situation is a perfectly good example. The price we got for him in comparison to what we thought we would have to pay is massively different. So waiting a month, if you like, to save £2, £3, £4 million or something, then we'll wait. And I just think that that's where that patience we can cash in on that at some point, because we're saving some money somewhere. But sometimes we do need to bite the bullet and pay the money. If we think he's that good, then get the deal done and get him in the door. And if it's £8 million, it's £8 million. I think he's going to be good value for that. And he's young enough and he fits the model to, if he does what we think he'll do, then we'll make the money back. And I think that's what we should be doing.
It's funny. It depends to an extent where you get your Celtic news for some of your perceptions of certain things. But I'm on Twitter a fair deal through what we do at the Celtic Exchange, and there's a lot of folks saying we've got 100 million in the bank, just pay whatever it takes. Well, but don't pay 8 million. That's a wee bit too much. you can't have it both ways. There's a band of fans that think just pay whatever the asking price is, and others when push comes to shove, it's like, oh, but 8 million, that's quite a lot. Maybe we shouldn't pay that. So you can't win. And that's, I suppose, the joy, the nature of Celtic. There's such a broad fan base. There's so many opinions, and that's what keeps it interesting for folks like us. Brydo, the last bit of news, and it wasn't quite covered in the press conference, but it seems to be the case that Bosun Lawal is going to sign for Stoke City for 2 million, which seems pretty decent money for an academy graduate who doesn't seem like he's part of Brendan Rodgers' plans, and he spent that last season at loan at Fleetwood Town. What do you make of that as a piece of business? It's decent returns for a guy who looked like he was surplus to requirements.
Yeah, I think by all accounts, I think a successful loan spell for him. Fleetwood obviously, I think, got relegated, but that's not to diminish how well he played. All the feedback from Fleetwood and any kind of videos that I've seen and comments on those were that he was a fantastic player for them. But that's a big difference to what we are as a club at Celtic and what Fleetwood are. So the challenges are completely different. Obviously, you've just got to put your trust in the football guys at the club, and they're obviously deem that he's not going to play. The young guy might be demanding, that he wants to play, and if he's not going to get a look in, and he's not played it pre-season or anything, then he's maybe just said, what, for this season playing football, I feel like I've developed, I need to go somewhere and play. And everybody wins, really. Celtic get a couple of quid for him. He gets to go in somewhere that he plays in a team for a manager that's going to play him, and we all move on and wish him well. And ultimately that is, there's so many of these players that don't make it at Celtic and other clubs. So they've got to find their place and find their lane, and hopefully he goes on and does well.
There's been a lot of chat at different times about the academy, the fact that it's not that it doesn't produce footballers, it just doesn't produce enough of them for Celtic's first team. There's lots of guys that come out of the academy, and I suppose Lawal's slightly different. He came to us via Watford's 19s or something like that. But the point remains that a lot of guys come through Celtic's academy and end up at a championship side or a Ross County or a St Mirren or whatever. And that's all fine. That's all part of the balance. And I think it's good business if you can develop a guy and get 2 million for him. I just hope that Celtic can engineer things in such a way over the next few seasons and beyond that we find a balance of both. You sell guys like Bosun Lawal, you make some decent money. You also bring through, I don't know if it's Daniel Kelly or Francis Turley or, the various young lads, Matthew Anderson, that are coming through just now. And hopefully one of them lands and becomes a first-team player. But that's that balance, Brydo, that we're crying out for. Anyway, different topic for a different day. In terms of looking ahead to Sunday, let's get to the team lineup. I don't anticipate many changes from the weekend there, Brydo. The only call I think we didn't make, you and I spoke around about this time last week, was James Forrest turning back the clock and getting I suppose what's become a relatively rare start, but he's still showing up and still showing his qualities. And this was in the absence, of course, of Daizen Maeda. The suggestion is that Maeda's fit and available again, so you can start with the winger, Brydo, and let me know of any changes you see to last week's 11.
Yeah, I think the Forrest thing was more because on the left-hand side, he's not really performed that well or done that much on the left-hand side, Jamesy. So I thought we would go with somebody else. But if Maeda's fit, I think he'll start. I think he offers so much. But I didn't know if Maeda was... I'd read that he didn't make training today or something, but if he's fit and ready to go, and that's the feedback, then I would imagine they'll try and start Maeda. And then I pretty much think that'll be the only change, to be honest. That'll be Kyogo and Khun will partner him in that kind of front three, if you like. And then the midfield three. The only thing would be, is there a deal for O'Riley being done and can he play or not? I suppose we all think he's going to be sold. Brighton looked like that one. So is he away? Is the deal being done? Is he away talking to them? I don't know. But if he was, then who would replace him? Maybe Bernardo or something. Maybe home. I'm not too sure. But I'd like to think he's still available, which because it means you've not sold him. So yeah, and the back four I think stays the same. I
think so. I really can't argue. So just to clarify what that would look like, it'd be Kasper Schmeichel in goals, Alistair Johnson right back, Greg Taylor left back, Carter Vickers and Scales in the centre. Your midfield three, and as so long as they're all fit and available, including O'Riley, despite ongoing talks, it's always going to be, I think at this time, McGregor, O'Riley, Hatate, and then up top, Kyogo through the middle, because who else is there? And then either side of him, Nicholas Khun, who's looking good, and Dies and Maeda. I spoke to Paulo Bernardo, Brydo. I mentioned that I was at the press conference yesterday, Thursday at Celtic Park. He seems delighted to be back. Very balanced young guy, and I think he's the kind of guy that has a lot of development in him. He says he enjoys working with Brendan Rodgers. He likes the way he coaches. He likes the way Celtic play. And though I don't think he's ready right now, do you think he could become a long-term successor for Matt O'Riley, or is that a tall order for whoever has to fill his boots?
I suppose it's difficult to say. I mean, I really like him as a player. I think that he made impacts in most of the games that he played. The games I don't like that he started were the European games. I think they were the only games he started quite early on, if I remember right. And he played well. He didn't disgrace himself in any shape or form. And then he's had some big moments. You know, he's had big moments. He's probably had big moments quicker and earlier than O'Riley did. Than when he came in. So there's nothing to say that he can't then go. We can't then say, oh, he's going to go and become a 25, 30 million pound player, because we need to see him in that consistency. We don't know if he's got that consistency factor yet. But what we do know is that he's coming from good stock from Benfica. I think he's the Portugal under 21 captain or something. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're not doing that if you're a dummy, you know. And I think we've signed a really good player for that level of money. You just think when you see other players going for crazy money across the world, I think it's a shot to nothing really. We know what we're going to get for him, and we'll only really know if he plays. It's all speculation otherwise, but in a football front, I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for. I think he's more physical than people give him credit for. I'll go back to that challenge where he wipes out, or Connor Golson actually wipes out him, but he was not scared in coming forward and putting himself right in the mix of that game. Wee things like at Pittodrie, when we dropped the points, he's banging his head off the wall, and he's absolutely gutted that we're not won the game. So there's just all of these wee things I think show that he's got a good bit of character. He can step up to the plate in the big moments. He can impact games, and if he does that, if he gets starts more often, then I'd like to think we'd see more of those moments in more of those games. And I can't see anything other than that happening. But can he do it to the level O'Riley's done it on a consistent basis? We'll only find out after he gets the opportunity.
In terms of starts and appearances, I think he featured 33 times for Celtic last year, but only 11 were starts, 2 of which I believe are in the Champions League. And that in itself is interesting. That tells you maybe Rodgers sees him as a good fit for certain environments. I asked the question of the lads on Monday in the weekly show, so it was James Paddy, your Brydo, James Paddy and Myth. And I asked the question, if O'Riley goes, which we do expect him to do so, how comfy are you with a midfield three starting the Champions League of Callum McGregor, Reo Hatate and Paulo Bernardo? I think at the moment, you know, Odin Thiago Home might have something to offer, Tomoki Iwata might have something to offer, but they're probably not ready just yet. And actually, as an aside, Iwata's not getting any younger. I think he's 27, so maybe a separate question. But midfield three, McGregor, Reo, Paulo Bernardo, what do you think for the big stage?
Yeah, I think it'd be okay, but if O'Riley's going, there's 100% somebody else going to come in. They're not going to not bring anybody else in. Bernardo's been signed for the status quo, i.e. with the players that we've got there. If O'Riley is sold, which looks like he probably will be, then I'm 100% certain they'll bring another midfielder in. Now, is that a holding midfielder that's big and physical and that allows McGregor to go forward one space? Maybe. Is it just a straight up, we'll sign a central midfielder to try and replicate what O'Riley's done? Maybe. But I'm fairly certain that if they sell him, there'll be somebody else coming in. Bernardo, like most young players, he'll have moments where he's fantastic and then he'll have moments where he's not. Thiago Home will be exactly the same, but this could be his season and he starts breaking through, not to start games, but to come into games and impact them enough that we start talking about him starting games. But I'd fully expect us to sign somebody else if O'Riley goes, because Iwata for me isn't the level. I don't think he's the level we need, but we need to remember he's an okay substitute. We're not in a position where we could go and buy a a carbon copy of Callum McGregor and say, all right, we're going to have like for like. It's just not going to happen. We're not got a like for Hatate. We're just not going to be in that financial ballpark to have players of that level replacing each other. But as long as we've got players of a good enough level that can come in and play half an hour or 20 minutes, or domestically even play 90 minutes if they're injured or something. But in that Champions League, we really need to have all our players, because we found out last year, as soon as one or two of those weren't on fire or were injured, we were in serious trouble.
I agree. I think we lacked a bit of quality when you went to the bench last season, and that's always something you would be looking to address. And I think it's unrealistic to expect. I think Rodgers wants to carry a squad of around about 23, 24, 25, maybe a push. It's unrealistic to think you're going to have 25 absolutely good to go Champions League ready footballers. That's just not the reality at Celtic or most other clubs, to be honest with you. And I think we need to find that balance, and that's where others like Iwata, Bernardo, Holm, and others across the squad might find themselves getting minutes. The interesting thing, I mentioned Bhoys and Lawal, and Rodgers actually challenged Lawal and Odin Thiago Holm just a couple of weeks ago to show us what you've got. This is pre-season, this is your chance to shine, your chance to stand out and show us what you're capable of. And it's very interesting that whilst one's been allowed to go out the door, Lawal away to Stoke, Thiago Holm found himself getting minutes on match day 1 of the season. That shows to me, and you're trying to read between the lines, but that shows to me that he's brought something to the party in pre-season in terms of his attitude and his application. And I think there are some signs that he may have something to offer this season. So let's see. I would expect him to be in the squad on Sunday, but perhaps not starting. So we'll see what Rodgers decides with his midfield. The other two guys I'm quite excited about, Brydo. One that's been here for a time and one that's relatively new in the shape of Khun. I think a lot of fans are excited with what he brought, particularly against Man City in the pre-season. I thought he picked that up well last week and he could have been man of the match. He showed some blistering pace at one point in that second half. But what I'm excited about the other guy is Alistair Johnston. He found himself in the team of the week in the Copa America. And I think it looks, early days of course, but it looks like those two could form a really good partnership in Celtic's right-hand side.
Well, 100%, and it's all to do with the types of players that they are. Alistair Johnston is very much a right-footed player. He doesn't look overly comfortable if the ball's in his left, but he's really athletic. He likes to defend, which is great, and he's got a real proper attitude to putting everything into the game. He's an honest player, and he'll get up and down as much as possible. So he'll try and overlap Kuhn as much as possible, because he will ultimately go inside onto his left foot. So it is a good kind of balance, I think. And the two of them are probably looking to have a really good season again. Kuhn in particular, because he's been written off by some people in the media as well. He's not been good enough, and he's failed in different teams or whatever. And I think Alistair Johnston will probably look to have this to be his season, where if he does what he's done already and carries on his Copa America form, then unfortunately for Celtic's position, he will then look to try and make a step up to a different league and a different team. And I dare say that'll be his ambition at some point in time as well. But like I said, right now, he's honest. He puts the effort in, he puts the miles in. And I think somebody like Kuhn needs that behind him. Because I don't think he's overly defensive, but he does work hard, to be fair to him. But I think he needs somebody like Johnston behind him and also backing him up in attacks as well.
And I think if it's Alistair Johnston or Nicholas Khun or anyone else that comes here, Brydo, and excels for 2-3 seasons, gives you some silverware and some big performances in Europe and then moves on for a premium, I think that's okay. I think just the frustration at the fans' end is that money being reinvested? Has the Jota money been reinvested, for example? Will we spend some of the money that we'll probably get for Matt O'Riley? Again, another question for another day. Let's take a quick look at Hibs at the moment. They've had a pretty poor start to the campaign, Brydo. They lost 3-0 at St Mirren last week, and that is not a good start. There's a lot of optimism around the place. David Gray is now permanent manager. I think he's made 4 or 5 signings. But into the bargain, they also lost to Kelty Hearts as part of their League Cup section. And so far, it's been a bit of an up and down start for them. Yeah,
I've actually got a good friend of mine who's a Hibs fan. I messaged him before we came on, and just to get a kind of Hibs fans perspective. And just like you said, they are optimistic. They've got a club legend. It's the manager. He's the manager proper now. He's done it a couple of times intern, but there's been a good few signings. I think they've signed another 2. Boy Bowie from Fulham, a big 6'7" player or something like that, and then that junior Boyle, I think, signed from, who played for Aberdeen against us in the Cup. And I think they're looking at the boy Luke McCowan at Dundee. I think they're one of the names in the hat to try and perhaps sign him, who I think is a cracking player, but Hibs or Aberdeen Hearts would be his level. So they've definitely got a freshness around them. They've still got fantastic players like the boy Joe Newell. I think he's a good, tidy football player. And Martin Boyle's, he's maybe at a stage his career, where he's going a wee bit backwards. Maybe lost a yard of pace as such, but he's still a very good technical player. So they have got a lot of players. I think defensively they're pretty dodgy, to say the least. Certainly from that second half against St Mirren, from what I've seen, defensively they looked a bit all over the place, but that's maybe takes a bit of time. So I think we could look at the results from last season, but they would mean absolutely nothing because it's a proper turnaround of their squad by the looks of it. And some players we know a bit about and other players we don't know anything about. So it definitely is fresh, and it'll be interesting to see them actually against us, to see what they've got to offer this season.
Do you know, it will be interesting. I'm just having a look just now. I'm saying 4 or 5 signings. It looks like 8 or 9 signings that have come in. Lots of change, coming in there, and potentially Luke McCowan and others still to happen. I think they needed a bit of a rebuild. They had guys like, was it Louis Stevenson and who's a big defender that's kind of left as well. Scottish Cup winners, guys that were still around from 2016, club heroes, as you say, but it was time to freshen things up. And I like David Gray. As I said to James last week, he gave me one of my highlights of the 2016 summer, and I'll always thank him for that. But there's work to be done there. There's a question or a suggestion that's come in here in the comments from Sean. Sean's saying that all he wants is 3 points and a good game to remember, but he does think that Hibs will set up 10 men behind the ball. Obviously, we're at Easter Road for this one, Brydo, and you've got the reduced allocation there. How do you think that will play out?
Yeah, I think the fact that they've made 9 or 10 new signings and maybe some more, and he's not a new manager, but he's a new manager, let's put it that way. They've not started fantastically well. I think Hibs will be a team that will be fine this season based on those things with the manager and the new players. But it takes time, and I think the last team that you want to be playing against when you're trying to find your way is a team like Celtic on the form that we're looking like showing. So I think bizarrely, I was quite sceptical about the 4-5-0 win against Kilmarnock, even though so I got that wrong. I would actually think and flip it the other way. I think it'll be a 3 or 4 goals for Celtic on Sunday. You
and I were there last time out, weren't we? It was kind of Adam Ida's arrival on the Celtic stage. He scored an early penalty. Alistair Johnston took a bad head knock, didn't he? We got a penalty there that Ida tucked away. Then it was a bit messy. Dylan Levitt maybe equalised for Hibs, and then we get the late penalty from Ida. And at that point, you were taking any sort of win. What was that, February of last year? And I think Celtic weren't playing particularly well, but, like the way these things go, you'll take the win and regroup from there. What you've got now is Celtic, albeit it's early. We've just had one competitive game, but as a continuation from pre-season into what we saw at Celtic Park last Sunday, they are playing really well. They're responding to the manager. They scored 4 goals in each of their last 4 games, being DC United, Man City, Chelsea, and now Kilmarnock. And I think it could be another 4-goal display on Sunday. Brydo, I'll put you on the spot. What exact scoreline do you think we're going to see?
I'm going to say 4-1.
4-1. Kasper Schmeichel losing his clean sheet record.
It's the way you mentioned that. I can't say. I can't. I think Hibs have got some decent pace and energy within their team, and they're at home, so I'll give them the goal. I'll give them a goal. Not a Kasper Schmeichel disaster, just a well-worked Hibernian goal. Very
good. You're a kind man, Brydo. So 4-1 from yourself. I'm going to go 3-0. I went 3-0 last week, and Tony Ralston ruined my prediction, but I was okay with that. But I think Celtic are in good form. They're playing well. They're scoring goals, and I think we'll see a few on Sunday. Albeit it could be a sticky game. They could, as Sean has suggested, potentially shut up shop. And ultimately, I was going to say you'd take any sort of win. Maybe we're past that just now. Of course, the win's the most important thing. But I think as is the tradition, you want to see Celtic play well and do it with a bit of flair. And I think at the moment, the signs are there that we can go and put on a show and get the win. But as we start to head towards the end of this one, your final thoughts as we head into match day 2 of the season?
Yeah, I just think we've started off really well. The background noise regarding transfers, I think the manager's been dealing with that quite well in the public and in the media, just to keep our attention focused on the job in hand. I think importantly, our rivals are struggling a wee bit. They might get their act together before the end of the window eventually and maybe start to get consistency. So I think we need to just have our foot on the gas, foot on their throat, if you like, early doors, and just keep battering those 3 points, because ultimately I think they will drop points. And I think we get an early, handsome lead in the league. I think that'll actually help us in the European games as well, because we can maybe perhaps rest some players domestically. So although that's a way down the line, I think it's important that these games get put to bed. And I just think with a manager like Rodgers, there's no issue around that. There's no issue around losing your focus or professionalism. I just think that it'll be right on it for the first whistle again, and playing at the tempo that I don't think anybody domestically can cope with, and just keep creating the chances and avoid an injury to Kyogo. You can't just, as soon as we're 2 or 3 up, take them off, and then let's just protect them a wee bit, because we don't have anybody else at the moment.
Do you know what I mentioned last week? At 3-0 up, I would have put on Stevie Woods for Kyogo, just anybody just to play safe, because he's one freak injury away from missing some really important games coming up. So we'll need to see what he decides there. He's obviously got a similar situation at left back with Greg Taylor as well, the only recognised left back at the club. But I think, as you say, one thing Brendan Rodgers won't allow for, and he did mention it last week, is complacency. And I do fully expect and hope that we'll see another strong performance and 2 wins from 2 by the time we're talking on Sunday afternoon. Brydo, thanks for joining us here on a Friday afternoon. Thanks as well to everyone that joins us and continues to join us in the live. We've got Tam Mack, Sean, Big Red, Mark Kearney, Sean Daly, Snitch, P. McLaughlin and various others. It's great to see you guys there. Joe Docherty has just joined us there with a 6-0 scoreline, no less. Nice to see you, Joe. So yeah, please do keep the comments coming as we do the pre and post match live shows. But in the meantime, for myself and Brydo, thanks for joining us. We'll be back on Sunday afternoon, shortly after the game of the final whistle show. So between now and then, enjoy your weekend. We'll see you guys.